This is a retrospective look at the first 6 mainline Kirby games. It's nighttime in the forest. After a light rain, the forest smells fresh. It's wet earth and marshmallows and a campfire. A searing hot marshmallow slips from my brother's roasting skewer and drips onto his leg, burning a lifelong scar. The moral of the story? Be careful with hot things. Or maybe marshmallows aren't as innocent as they look. I didn't play the Kirby games much when I was growing up. I didn't have the systems they were on. I did have an N64, but I didn't have the one Kirby game for it. I saw the Kirby games around growing up. I must have seen the Super NES games at my friends' houses. I did play the Super Smash Bros. Games, and Kirby was my favorite character. I like characters that can annoyingly avoid fighting and jump in the action every so often. In Super Smash Bros., Luigi, Mario, and Kirby were my go-tos. I was always curious to play the original Kirby games. I finally got a chance to play them all recently because I got Kirby's Dream Collection for the new, state-of-the-art Nintendo Wii system. So, I gave all these games a spin, looking to answer the question, what makes Kirby so great? This isn't a ranking video, and I wouldn't feel qualified to rank all the games anyways. I just wanted to take a historical look at some of the classics. In the beginning, there was Kirby. He was just energy. The universe was still a formless void. Then he took shape and stepped out onto the stage. Just vanilla Kirby. No ability to copy other enemies' abilities. Kirby's humble beginnings. Kirby's Dream Land was released in 1992 for the Nintendo Game Boy handheld. Directed by Masahiro Sakurai, it was a cute little black and white, or kinda green really, Mario-like side-scrolling adventure, with some gameplay elements, including a small taste of side-scrolling shoot-'em-up action. The director, Masahiro Sakurai, who would later go on to create some lesser-known fighting games, said that at 19, when he was coming up with the conception of Kirby, he wanted to make a game that was easy and accessible to people who are new to games. Reminiscing back on those old days, he said he also wanted to make a game that used enemies in a creative way, thus the ability to consume them and spit them out as a weapon. Kirby is an adorable character, with a lot of personality and charm. He looks like a happy little marshmallow, and this joyful vibe is carried throughout the whole game. It is doubtless that the character design and touches of personality, for example Kirby being ejected from a whale spout, led to the popularity of this particular series. It was the first, a short gem of a game that spawned all of the following games. But if you're expecting the copy ability formula in this silly little masterpiece, then you're going to be sorely disappointed. This was before that feature was added to the series. This game is tight, short, it's a perfect little game. I'm biased to like it because of its length and because I played it first. But with that said, I think it's a great game, even today. In 1993, the year after the release of Kirby's Dream Land, Kirby's Adventure released for the Nintendo Entertainment System and Famicom. Again, this game was directed by Kirby creator Masahiro Sakurai. Programmers of this game made the best out of putting Kirby on the now 10-year-old Nintendo hardware. The game was also ported to multiple Nintendo systems in the future and had a remake on the Game Boy Advance. And the question that nobody knew at the time, that they even wanted to know, was answered. What color is Kirby, really? Pink! Sakurai says he knew he wanted Kirby to be pink, but the staff was unaware and was surprised by this unexpected color choice. I'm still waiting on the answer to exactly what Kirby is, but that'll probably never get answered. Kirby's Adventure might be my favorite Kirby game that I've played. It's up there. It's really good. Kirby was also given his iconic copy abilities in Kirby's Adventure. This was a new element to the game and would become Kirby's signature. It's so fun to try out all these new moves, and it just makes the game really addictive. The game has great music, rhythm, flow to it. Plus, Kirby gets to sing into a microphone, which is really funny and perfectly silly. The whole game is perfectly silly. There's lots of exploits and secrets. Personally, I loved playing this game. It had plenty of challenge, but wasn't too frustrating. And you could always fly over things and stages if you needed to. And you can play as a janky Sonic the Hedgehog in part of the game. So it's gotta be great. Kirby's Dream Land 2 was released in 1995 for the Game Boy and was directed by Shinichi Shimomura. Just another wonderfully perfect little game. This game introduced my favorite gameplay in the Kirby series: animals. The animal companions are really awesome, and they take Kirby around the level in different ways. For example, the fish has Kirby inside of his mouth. The companions include Rick the hamster. He runs fast, but won't slip on ice. Ku the owl, who can fly and can manage to fly against the wind. Also allows Kirby to inhale while flying. Kine the ocean sunfish, who can swim and manage swimming against the current. And he also allows Kirby to inhale underwater as well. Kirby's abilities are changed depending on what helper he's attached to. There's also a helper guy called Gooey in the game that's like something, I don't know. But he's in there too. The animal pals help take you around the game. Is this useful? I don't know. Is it cool? Yes, it's cool. It's so cool. It's definitely not very useful in Dreamland 3, but here it's pretty helpful because you get to swim against the current, you can fly against the wind, and it can be helpful with the bosses. Gives you a little boost. They were experimenting how to use this here, but later on it became a less useful gimmick. Kirby games are full of gimmicks. They also reuse the same broth and usually add just a tad bit more for flavor. But this one, I love this game. It was a lot of fun. 1996 saw the release of Kirby Superstar in Japan and the USA for the Super Famicom and Super Nintendo. Masahiro Sakurai was once again directing this massive new Kirby game. It was built on the idea of making a longer and more robust game, with multiple modes and scenarios to play through. Kirby's copy abilities were improved to have more of a move set for each. Enemies no longer died in one hit, and the art style was changed to have a more Donkey Kong Country style background. And it really took use of the colorful SNES palette. And co-op multiplayer was added. Kirby could have a sidekick, which was the request of the legendary Shigeru Miyamoto. The gameplay formula had been well established by now, and this part of the Kirby series was becoming a little creatively bankrupt. But that's okay, because there was a lot of flair put into making this game stand out, with different game modes and tweaks to the core mechanics. For many people, this was a favorite game in the Kirby series, at least the ones I'm looking at here. Of course, that would likely change if I put Kirby Planet Robobot or Kirby and the Forgotten Land in this video. Eventually, Kirby's Superstar was given a much-needed makeover and fine-tuning in the remake Kirby Superstar Ultra for the Nintendo DS. If you're playing the games in chronological order, like I was, this is when the Kirby formula gets a little bit creatively bankrupt, in my opinion. The game is a bit rough around the edges, and it's repetitive, especially visually. Very much the aesthetic of boring 90s graphics. But what a beefy package. I love that the weapon abilities you can get have multiple skills associated with them. You can do different cool things with each weapon. And it's leaning towards feeling like Super Smash Bros., more so than any other game on this list, with maybe the exception of the aesthetics of Kirby 64. The game collections here are 3 new Kirby adventures, Dynablade, Revenge of Meta Knight, and Milky Way Wishes. It also has a really different remake of the original Kirby that bears little resemblance to the original. A racing game, a Kirby treasure tracker-like Metroidvania, sounds better than it is, along with other accoutrements. Interestingly, there was a game mode cut from this collection. It was to be called Kagero Mansion. a horror RPG Kirby game. Kirby's mouth would have been sealed shut by a spell from an ancient wall clock that once belonged to a wizard. It would have taken place inside a creepy mansion. But it didn't happen. In 1997, Kirby's Dream Land 3 was released in the US. Interestingly, before the Japanese release in 1998. Europe and Australia didn't see a release until the Wii Virtual Console, due to problems with converting it to the differing format of the Super Nintendo systems in those areas. The director of Kirby's Dream Land 2, Shinichi Shimomura, returned to direct this game. Over time, the visual style of Kirby has gone through a lot of interesting iterations. From epic yarn to Kirby and the Forgotten Lands. But this was one of the most unique games in the series in terms of style. The willingness to try things while keeping the tried and true formula is what makes Kirby so familiar and nostalgic. It's innocent, it's cutesy, it's easy to play, it's completely sweet and comfy, like warm milk or sweet tea or a soft blanket. Kirby's Dream Land 3 is a pleasant dream, with pastel colors and cute hand-drawn anime aesthetic. Ha! 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 What the hell was that? No, don't eat that, Kirby. Spit it out. It's a pleasant, warm-hearted... Jesus! One of my favorite parts of this game is the animals. Yes, like Kirby's Dream Land 2, we see a cast of animal companions. I assume it's the director Shinichi Shimomura once again adding his touch, but I'm not sure. The animals include Rick the hamster, Coo the owl, Kine the ocean sunfish, Pitch the bird, Choo Choo the blob brain parasite. Officially it says she's supposed to be an octopus. Maybe a jellyfish? Or an oceanic brain parasite? And finally, my favorite, and yours too if you know what's good for you, Nago the calico cat. Nago rolls Kirby around like a little pink marshmallow ball, like a dung beetle or something. Nago really isn't that effective in the game, but he is so adorably awesome. This game features simple puzzles and obtuse goals. It definitely feels like it paved the way for a more simplistic and overly cute reimagining of Kirby, like Kirby's Epic Yarn, for example. Overall, I'd say the game has a sweet feel, like really sweet candy, and also like fluffy and kind of cute. It's the year 2000, and we see the release of Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards, on the Nintendo 64. Directed again by Shinichi Shimomura, it was a 3D Kirby game. To this day, the crowning achievement of Nintendo's gaming empire. The only truly fully 3D Kirby game ever made. Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards. Okay. It wasn't really fully 3D. This game was 2.5D and kept the same basic formula of Kirby going. A side-scroller with copy abilities. I know I said earlier that Kirby was creatively and morally bankrupt. No, not morally, I didn't say morally. But within the reused structure, Kirby tried some interesting things. In this case, it was mixing abilities to create pairs with interesting outcomes. A lot of fun of this game was the surprising mixing of abilities. It was just fun to see what would happen if you mix fire and bombs, and then you get a Kirby that has fireworks exploding out of him, or mixing two spike abilities and getting a wacky Swiss Army knife of strange combinations coming out of Kirby's pink body. It was a really fun part of this game. The game uses a D-pad instead of the N64's analog stick. As I said, this game was released in the year 2000. Well after Mario 64 in 1996, Zelda Ocarina of Time in 1998, and Banjo-Kazooie also in 1998. And it was a 2.5D side-scroller. Imagine being compared to those three monster games on the N64. It wasn't Mario and it wasn't Zelda, but it would be compared to them, as other Nintendo franchises would be as well. Thus, it was a bit of a dud. Revisiting it now outside the context of when it was released, you would likely find it's a fun, challenging 4 to 7 hour experience. So what's the answer? The character is awesome and adorable, powerful and cute. The copy abilities are such a fun mechanic, though a headache for programmers of Super Smash Bros., I'm sure. It has creative flares like animal companions, a formula that works really well. It's been open to visual style makeovers throughout the years, and despite the usual gameplay formula being applied over the whole series, it's found ways to really mix it up and do it in fun ways. Kirby has been here as a Nintendo icon, and he's here to stay, with his fluffy little self and his voracious, insatiable, and frankly disturbing appetite. But in the end, it comes down to the games. There are so many great Kirby games, and it's worth taking a look at them and playing some of them if this is your cup of tea. Thanks for watching.